Thank you, Annie.
Rani tēnei te ngāka e mihi ake ana ki a koe wā. While you were talking, I was trying to find a word other than awesome to describe what you are, how good your kaupapa was. And the word that came to mind was moana-esque. That kōrero was moana-esque. You know, there were a few gentle and inspirational lightning bolts. You know, my ageing mind is kind of ill-equipped to retain them all. But it's really awesome to be reminded that the most important things for us that we need to focus on are our own kaupapa, our own values, our own tikanga, and also to stop complaining and get busy. Tēnei te mihi ake kia koe wa. Our next kaupapa e Huama, Whaipooti te ruha, Wahao te Rangatahi, is a panel of rangatahi who have worked with and been influenced by Moana and his work. And I'm hopefully now going to hand it over to Sian Marie Cassidy from Ngāpuhi and Te Whānau Apanui, tēnā koe wā. And Sian has very generously offered to facilitate a number of our sessions over the course of the next 2 days. Kia ora, Sian. Kei whia koe. Tēnā koe. Hara mai wa. Kia koe.
Can we hear me? Yeah, no, I can hear me now. Kia ora. Uncle Sian Marie tēnei, and welcome to the Power in Our Truth Rangatahi panel. Welcoming to the stage our kai kōrero today. We have, Seth, can I get you to swap seats? Beautiful. We have Julia Whaipooti, no Ngāti Porou, Matahiapo Safari Hynes, no Rangitane, me Ngāti Kahununu, Jay Mareroa, no Mātātua, and Pania Newton, no Ngāpuhi, Te Rarawa, me Waikato. Ka nui ki ngā kai kōrero i tēnei kaupapa. Thank you for joining us today, e hoa mā, to share some of your time, your experiences and your mātauranga with us. It's to honour the contributions of Pania Jackson towards the goal of realising justice in Aotearoa. So I know we are running a little bit over time today, so we'll get started. Keen to hear, e hoa mā, how you met Moana and some of your most salient memories of him, please. And we'll start with you, Julia. Kia ora, e hoa.
Tēnā koe o tēnā, tēnā koutou, mihi tuatai ki ngā rangatira o tēnei whenua. Mauri ora kia koutou. Kia koe papa, moki au kia koe moi tonu rā. He tino kauri taku ngā kau. Engari, nui taku aroha kia koe moi mai. Huri ki te whānau. Papa, tēnā koe, ngā tōkana, nui taku aroha kia koutou. Haere tonu kia koutou. Te koutou, e kōrua taupari take pipi, ki ora. Kia ora, Papa. Tēnā koutou. How I met Papa Moana, I'll just say acknowledge, like, I just had a friend who messaged me saying, I'll call you on the Rangatahi panel, but I'm sure you're at least Rangaroa by now. And I think it is correct, but I think I met Papa when I was Rangatahi. So over 10 years now, 15 years. And at law school, when I was there, so he was just this fella who used to show up and talk to all the Māori law kids first year. And so I used to, the first time I met him was to go and bring him in for a kōrero to all of us tauira, ngā rangahutira at Vic Uni. And I remember then we had a whakapapa connection, and he made the Ahunga Tikanga atu whakiiriora, and our connections through that, as Matua talked about earlier, he no doubt found those whakapapa connections quite quickly. But I remember, like, you don't know who he is, but he's just a beautiful, strong presence, and he was just very gentle, and I was very fortunate to walk along alongside him for many years, but I remember being quite dramatic, which may shock some of you who know me. But when he, when I was hearing about how many of our whānau were in prison, I was like, why has no one done anything about this? And I remember having a cry to him about it and feeling overwhelmed that it was something I was going to fix. And he was just so beautiful, and he just miri-miri'd me into that space. So that's our starting point. Me as a tutu, an actual rangatahi, and I'll leave it there. Kia ora.
Well done.
Tēnā tātou, te tangake, ngānu, kai wāhia tātou te rangi, kai tutu te rangi, tēnā te rangi. E mihi ana ngā te Raukawa, engari kia mga mai koutou, tēnei ko taku kaikuia, he whāngai no arona te hana roto mai o kereru, nā reira. Kore e mihi kia hau anō, engari ngā te Raukawa, o te rai tō tātou rangatira, tō tātou tohungai no wākene. E korua ko moana ko te whakatinanatanga o te tino rangatiratanga. Ne? Korua tō korua rāngai. Korua koutou tērā. Kia ora. Te Matahiapo taku ingoa. Oh, it's broken. Hello. Kia ora. Oh. Kia ora. Te Matahiapo safari taku ingoa. No rangi tāne a hau, no Ngāti Kahungunu a hau. I first met Moana at, I can't remember what year it was, it might have been 2018 or 2017. It was at Henrietta Maxwell's tangihanga at Wainui Mata. And it was quite funny because my mum, you know when you are like the power of your parent and you just get taken around to all of the kaupapa, all of the tangihanga, you get introduced to 100 million people and you're just like, I just want to go home. We were standing there and my mum goes, oh, I have to introduce you to someone. And I was like, oh God, another person. And she took me over. She's like, this is Moana. I had no idea who he was. And I said, this is Moana, blah, 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 blah. And so him and I started talking because I was just starting to make my plans about where I would go for university. And he talked to me about different options. He said, oh, Waikato has a very good law program and Victoria is okay too. Fast forward to 2019 when he came to talk at our Laws 123 MPO tutorial. I reminded him of that story and he said, well, I guess I don't give very good advice if you're here talking to me right now in Victoria instead of Waikato. And there are a couple of salient memories that I'll always be really grateful, and there is the thinking side of things, right? How he crafts people's thinking, but I think for me some of the things were his mannerisms and behaviours. So, and of course that's talking about his humility. So I'll always remember he came to talk once at law school and he greeted every single person that walked in the room. And there were about 60 of them. He literally stood at the door and greeted, whether it was a hongi, whether it was a kiss, whether it was a hug, every single person in the room. And I sat back and I was like, wha mana. And there was another instance where he was telling me his story about, his life and the things that he had done, particularly at law school, and how in his final year he wanted to be the best law student because he wanted to prove to everybody that he was smart, that our people were smart. And I remember he said, and then I got it, I was up for 2 seconds, and I walked back off and I thought, is that it? I put myself through all of that pain to prove to all of these Pākehā, to all of these people that I was smart, and was that it? Which again informs mannerisms, informs thinking and behaviours towards having to prove ourselves to Pākehā, whether it's that our laws are worth living by, whether it's our tikanga is a valid form of law.
Kia ora tātou. Tuatahi tautoko hia nā mihi kua mihia kia kōtau. Te haukaina, Ngāti Raukawa. Ko he tēnei te mihi. Tēnei taku waka ko matātua, kau ki te tai rāwhiti, maina kuri a whārei ki te hirau, I te tapu a muri wai e. Jason Mareroa tōku inua, ki aku whanau na te whānau a te pāpara a Moana, aku whanau na o te waimana kāku, tēnei te mihi ana ki au kōtau. My name's Jason Mareroa, and I first came into contact with moana when I was a little kid, and similarly to Te Matahiapo and tana whakatipurana, there was a group of us, we named the group, we called ourselves a gang at the time, and the name of our gang was SFMs, and we're known as the spoiled fat mokopunas. And so there was a small group of us, and our mamas used to take us to all these hui. They're involved with the Māori Women's Welfare League. They're involved with the different activist movements, and there was some hui we weren't allowed to go to because I was a male and there was only females allowed at those hui. And so, yeah, we were taken around, and then part of that upbringing involved being in all these deco workshops and te tiriri, rah, rah, rah. Anyway, so I was that spoiled mokopuna. They went around, they was taken around, and Moana was part of those forums. Didn't know who he was. I think they just, when they talk about, a lot of hui and no dui, I thought they were doing a lot of hui and no dui. Until I got older, and I was part of the Matike Mai kaupapa with Pans and Ronnie, he spoke earlier. And it wasn't until then, I can't remember the year, but it wasn't until then, because when you're raised in Mātātua, the whole world evolves around Mātātua. We don't know about the treaty or Waitani, we don't know about anything else, but we know about Mātātua, and that's how we're raised. And I don't know, we get told later, you're going to be a succession plan for Bala. Don't know about the success part, but certainly a plan was made by them. And I just randomly somehow, I don't know if Ronnie remembers this, but there's someone who couldn't catch their flight. And so I was given that person, and so I was a lie. I was a false person on the flight from Auckland down to Wellington. And Ronnie says, I hadn't met Ronnie, but just this is your ticket, it's not your name, just act like it's you and get on the plane. So there's a lot of illegal work was done to get me there. And it was part of that really I got to, I think, understand the enormity and the weight of Papa Moana. And the first things they go, Father, that was a cool kōrero, eh? It's like, bro, that was boring. He just talked like there wasn't any excitement in his voice or anything. Just spoke. And I really struggled to really tune into that. But when I did tune into it, it was cool. So cool. And so that's how I came to know Pa Moana, and more intimately, and understanding the work and the responsibility and the obligation and the transaction of that was more so in Matike Mai. But probably just in hindsight and sitting here remembering those things, I think really privileged and honoured to be in spaces that you don't know the weight of at the time, until there comes a moment where, just like the bush, the tree falls down and the sun's a bit hot, and you realise, shoot, there's some work that has to be done, and we've been trained to do this stuff. And so, koe taku maumahara tana.
Tēnā tātou te whare. Me tautoko e ngā mihi kua mihia. Tēnā koe te rangatira o tira ki te whānau o Papa Moana, kia tātou katoa ngā mihi nui. Pania Newton is my name. E noho anau ki runga I tōku tūranga waiwai ki ihu mātau. And it's a privilege and an honour to be part of this panel. I'm like Julia, I'm a rangakeke, not so much a rangatahi. So when Te Matahiapo asked me to join this, I said, why doesn't Tira or Ngā Rauira do it? They're more rangatahi than I am, but he got me and I'm here. So real honour and privilege to be part of this kaupapa. I first met I went to St. Joseph's Māori Girls Catholic Boarding School when Tira was there, and I was only there for a short time. And we met Moana and knew him as Tira's koro. And so we in 2004, I think we went on the hikoi, Tira, the Takutai Moana hikoi, the seabed and foreshore hikoi, which was probably one of the first hikoi that I ever been on. So glad that Miss Kingi allowed us to even go on that hikoi, but she had a really good relationship with Papa Moana. And we got out for that day and it was really good. And I left St. Joe's and then reconnected back with Papa Moana through the Matike Mai Aotearoa Rangatahi kaupapa. And, I remember I was at that hui with Jay. I think I might have been one of those illegal aliens on that flight too. Didn't know where I was going, what the kaupapa was about. But a couple of weeks before that, I was part of the Super City, Super Shitty hikoi when they were trying to, proposed to amalgamate the councils into the Auckland Super City. And my mate Puawai was like, I think you should come on this kaupapa because, we're still riding on that rant and that wave of pukuriri. And she was like, I think this kaupapa will be good for you. And when we got there, there was a lot, went through it. There was a lot of people that used to, be amazed by Moana. And I used to just think, man, that's just Tera's koro, he's just that. And that's how I probably remember him most. And some of the experiences that I had over the years with him through our kaupapa at Ihu Mātau, had the privilege of him supporting our kaupapa. He very much felt like that, was just a koro. And he was so gentle and he was that shoulder that you could lean on. And there was this pikitia that I wanted to share today that really captured the essence of what he meant to me. And there was this moment that him and I shared at the back of a caravan in a tent during the escalation in 2019. And he didn't want to be in front of the cameras. He didn't want anybody to know that he was there. And he said, can we meet behind this caravan in this tent? And there's this intense moment where we're just looking at each other, and I'm saying, what do I do? There's all these people here. I feel we as a whānau felt responsible for their safety, and it was winter, and he just turned and he's like, this is just how it's supposed to be. And I said, well, how can this kaupapa contribute to constitutional transformation? And he said, it already is. And since then, I held on to that kōrero, and in many ways, it's encouraged me to remain on my whenua in Ihu Mātau, and plant kai, as Jessica would say, is a form of transformation, building our hapu, because through that kaupapa we rejuvenated our governance structures, and now that's where my focus is on. And so although people say, come into this party and come into this kaupapa and do this, my main focus is building the capability and capacity of our marae and our hapu. And so I thank Moana for those learnings. And part of my focus at the moment too is about continuing the work of Matike Mai Aotearoa Rangatahi. And so through that kaupapa, I can truly say that I was politicized, radicalized and conscientized. And because of those promises that we made in those kaupapa too, I feel this responsibility to ensure that kaupapa is seen through to 2040. So happy to come today to report on where we are at with Matike Mai Aotearoa and what our next steps moving forward are.
Might need? No? Okay. Tēnā koutou. Thank you for that whakamarama of a humble, thoughtful man teaching wisdom through gentle mannerisms and behaviours, coupled with Jay's enlightening recollections of flight travel identity and the infamous SFMs. Tēnā koe e hoa. So now keen to learn more e hoa mā about how Moana influenced your work and influenced your life. Should we start with you, Te Matahiapo? Tēnā koe.
Sorry. Like I said, there's the thinking way of things. And what I mean when I say that is all the kaupapa I'm involved in, the way I think about those kaupapa, the way I think about dreaming for the future, planning for the future, taking action for the future, basically everything in my life, you know, without trying to kare i te whakamomona kōrero e kare mā, is all really because of him. Because of him, because of the likes of Kokorani, Whai Mākere, Whai Ani. But everything I do, in terms of whether it's on social media, the way I might respond to a particular Crown action, whether it's going home and trying to start up wānanga amongst our people about te tiriti o waitangi, or even cultural revitalisation, whether it's how I keep talking to my whānau about, yes, tikanga is a valid law and it's a law in its own right, and we will not, and there will be a point in our lives where we won't live under Pākehā authority, whether it's opening up my own mind to the possibilities, all of those things, all of the way I think, the way I am, or particularly when it comes to those mannerisms of humility, those things. I'm not going to say I am those things. I'm trying to do those things. Hard to describe without sort of saying a whole chunk and a huge chunk of how I think, how I try to act, what I try to embody, how I think about the different kaupapa that I do, has really sort of set the path for the rest of my life as far as I'm concerned. So yeah.
Nā koe. Julia.
One of the greatest gifts Papa's left me with, and it's firmly etched in my heart and my whakapapa and like the moko that I wear and carry, is the aroha for our people and our whānau. And that seems really fluffy, but it's such a tangible thing in how I mahi live with many of our whānau. So we all know, everyone in this room will know the takahi of the kāwana, the colonisation that's living and breathing, and the tahai of our children from whānau, and the caging of our people in prisons, and our expression of through the Crown's eyes of tino rangatiratanga being the sprinkling of chocolate chips onto the cookie they've already baked, and they chuck us on advisory groups, te mea. I'm really clear that many of our whānau can cause harm in moments in time, and I've spent time with Papa and with many of our whānau. I've spent times in my own whānau, all the things, but that there's to see them as the mokopuna as we are, and as the tipuna we are meant to become, and with that aroha that I feel is how I practice, and the mahi that I can never describe because I don't know what I do, I just do what feels right. But that there's a direct line, umbilical cord as well, to the abuses of the Crown. So when our whānau cause harm, or when they do harm within our own whānau, whether, whatever that is, that I can see the potential of them and love them, and I can hold the umbilical cord straight to where the responsibility truly lies. So... yeah, it's like this whakatauki for days that I walk around with sometimes where I'm like, love our whānau, also realistic, but love our whānau is like the most powerful tool I have in my kiti in practice, and that came from him. Like that, yeah. And he used to, I mahi at the moment, the Royal Commission that's looking at abuse of children, of our mokopuna and care at state and church hands. And before I went there, I phoned him. Well, I got bored of looking after my kid, so I was on baby leave and I got a bit itchy and I was like, I need to go do some mahi. But I gave him a call and I was like, Papa, what do you think about this? So heaps of my mates in here have been part of that as well. And he just said to me, he was like, keep yourself safe and keep our people safe. And I hold that.
Tēnā koe e hoa. Jay.
If I go back to my upbringing, or think about my upbringing. For those of you who know Mātātia, especially in places like Tūhoi, like we're as flexible as a crowbar. Hey, especially when it comes to tikana and stuff. And we become experts at walking on eggshells without cracking them. And so I think, that's just how we are, I suppose. That's just part of our DNA. Part of that, in terms of upbringing and being, and many of us have been part of different gangs like Spoiled Fate, Mokopunas, and part of our stuff being raised was that you never gurutized people. That wasn't part of the culture. Mana entrenched to us was always you have a responsibility, and you potentially will be acknowledged for that responsibility, and you potentially might not be, but it's still a responsibility. And in the acknowledgement, if you ever did get an acknowledgement, and those of us who work for our iwi, it's very, very few and far between do we get acknowledged for that. But when you do, koia kai reira te mana. I whakatō mai te hapu, te whānau, te iwi kai runa i a koe. And I think with Papa Moana, I think, you know, he was, in my life, he was part of a mass or a current of people who I was privileged to be in contact with and to participate in their different discussions. There's three kōrero that I wholeheartedly remember from Matua. One of them, two of them that make sense to this kōrero is, one of them is know the symptoms from the causes, deny the assumption, stop the terror. The other one, it was here, after Matike Mai, we had presented it at Waitani, kind of like, you know, tick the box, that part of the work was done. And we came to, I can't remember what the hui was here, this wasn't here then, it was over in the kitchen. And there was a group of us that come down, and I remember Pāmoana, he talked to us, we asked what the most common thing was amongst Indigenous peoples around the world in terms of his mahi. And he said that the most common thing that he's experienced is that what all Indigenous peoples do is they put all the sanctity around something when it's at threat. They put all this tapu around it. He said the lesson, though, is that that's not the commonality amongst Indigenous people. The commonality amongst Indigenous people is that we forget to take that sanctity away when it's no longer at threat. Now, when you say that to a mātātua, that don't make sense, eh? Because we're crowbars. They don't, no, everything's tapu. Even the way you walk is tapu. Everything's tapu. And so those are the things that challenged my thinking. It was those types of things that challenged my thinking. And so I think in terms of the influence is that when I walk into a room, whether it's with my mahi, whether it's within iwi stuff, in whakatohea, we just done our settlement, and there's a lot of aftermath that comes with that. When it's in hapu stuff, marae stuff, even with our own whānau. If we walk into the room and you're not part of the solution, then you need to get out. And I think those are the things, if I'm here and I can't identify the symptom from the cause, I'm not being helpful and I'm not keeping them safe. If I can't intuitively see that the sanctity is so wrapped up that my people at home, we've forgotten to take that sanctity away because it's no longer at threat, then am I part of the solution or am I part of the problem? And so I think those are probably the things that just sit there for me. And if this was all like a river, and Pāmoana was just a current of that river, how do I be the current of that river that moves us along, rather than being what we call at home the washing machines that just wheel around in the river and they just sit there and wheel around? They have a place. They have a place, But the lessons I think that I got from Pa Moana is how do you become part of the current to shift our people along. And so those are two things that really sit deep with me. And so whatever I'm doing, there's always reminders that, oh, yep, I don't have to be a crowbar. I can see this for what it is. Oh, yep, no, this ain't an eggshell. Actually, it's this. And how do we be part of the current? So, huia.
Kia ora.
I think for me, there's a couple of things. The first one is how to be a good tupuna, and just the way that his mokopuna talk about him, or the way that he talked about his mokopuna used to make me think, gee, one day I hope that I can love my mokopuna and they will in return love me the way that they loved him. And his ability to draw on pūrākau in any presentation, whether it was about homelessness or the justice system or about transformation, he always started with a pūrākau that often linked to his mokopuna, and that made him so relatable. And that is one of the learnings that I took from him is be relatable and be intentional in your kōrero. Another one is the Matike Mai Aotearoa Rangatahi kaupapa has been a real influence in my life, and is one of the legacies that I have contributed my life to fulfilling. And so I think about that a lot, and it keeps me awake at night a lot. The third thing is a Royal Marsden research project that my hapu and our whānau are leading, which is dedicated to Matike Mai Aotearoa and is named Matike Mai Te Hiaroa Protect Ihu Mātau. And Carwyn and Linda are part of those kaupapa, and we're really privileged to have them as part of our team. But that research is hapu-led and is whānau-led, and by that I mean it's led by our kaupapa-based whānau, but it is also led by ahika and whānau of Te Ahiwaru and Ihu Mātau. And so that's one of the learnings that he taught me. How do we come out of the institutions and bring kaupapa back to our marae and our hapu and make decisions for ourselves? And so now I think Te Ahiwaru have 4 major research projects that are located within our hapu and are led by our whānau for our whānau. And so that's one of the ways that he's influenced me. And just practical ways of contributing towards constitutional transformation, being on your whenua, being on the marae. So I'm on the marae committee and part of our hapu trust as well. I work for my marae, for my hapu. And so those were one of the learnings. I also did law, and I made the conscious decision not to get admitted to the bar, because we went to this kaupapa in Hawaii through Matike Mai Aotearoa, and we heard from this wahine from Turu Island who said, and this is no disrespect to anybody who's in the system, but it really resonated for me, is that she said that by participating in the system, she felt like she was legitimizing it. And in that moment, I just finished law school and I was doing profs, and I had this career crisis, and I was supposed to go and work for a law firm at Rotorua. And in that moment, I said, well, I won't do that, and instead I will follow this kaupapa with my whānau and for my whenua. And so that's one of the ways that it's influenced me. And yes, some of those are the kaupapa that we wish to continue in his honour as well.
Tēnā tātou. Thank you for sharing some of that impact that Moana has made on your lives. Safari, dreaming for the future, planning for the future, aroha for our people, and seeing them as the mokopuna that they can be and that they are. And Julia's wise words on those working in challenging spaces, on keeping yourself safe and keeping your people safe. Prudent words of wisdom that we can all take with us on our journey. Next Pātai team, what are you doing to continue this work? I know you've already touched on some of that, Pania, so I'm going to throw to you first, Jay. Mr. SFN.
What do we do? What am I doing? Well, I've got 2 kids. And they're going to have a different upbringing to you, and they're going to have a different upbringing to me. And they've just been taken out because they were too noisy. But I think, yeah, what am I doing? Yeah, I'm raising two really cool children
Kia ora.
who knows themselves, who I've got a boy who's 5, I've got a girl she turns 2 in Jan. And like, they're relentless as. I hate being their father sometimes. It's like, hey, you kind of get what you got, and it really sucks being a father sometimes. And I think probably the gentle giant that Moana was, and slightly jealous that I wasn't one of his mogopunas that get talked about around the world. But I think those as a father, those are examples of what I'm doing now. Is when my 5-year-old child is saying, "Oh, I hara tērā te tikana." I'm like, what? Huh? And the self-reflection is, what's my response to that? And I think Pa Moana was perfect at that. Hey, didn't faze him. Internally, something else might have been going on, but externally could meet it where it was. And I think as a father with my children, this is real selfish, kōrero, but who cares? As a father with my children is that I can meet them where they are and not be the intergenerational handover where you react in a different way or you respond in a different way to that, but rather the mokopuna that we've been talking about, you have to nurture that in your own children. And I think, that's part of the mahi. Yeah, we're doing all this other mahi and we work over here, work over there, doing matiki mahi. Who cares? My 2 children they're gonna be footprints on this place. They're gonna be part of that same river. And I think that's probably the best legacy and work that I can do in my own life.
Tēnā koe e hoa. Julia.
Just non-compromising on our right to be our fullest self as Māori and what tino rangatiratanga is. So mahi, lots of people reference Moana. The kāwana references Moana. They'll be like, oh yeah, he said something, Mātiki mai constitutional transformation, and then they present a shit treaty policy or something, which actually just means the state retains power and they will contract a Māori NGO to steal our kids for the state. Things like that. So when I'm sitting at the tepu and I hear that, I'm just I'm very clear about what our mana motuhaki looks like, what our tino rangatiratanga looks like, and just pulling that up at like every single table that I'm at, every single space that I'm at. It's just really, really clear. And then, now that he left us with so much homework and left early, so I just blame him. I'll be like, he said that we had to do it like this. So I'm just relentlessly Māori in our right to be Māori in every way, shape or form. Also have a kid, sometimes quite hard to be her mum, one of her mums, because now I know why some people find me annoying, because she's quite annoying to me. She's like highly righteous and uncompromising, but that is a huge privilege. Like when I was born, he whakapūtanga, no, that's ages ago. When I was born, he whaipanga hau was released. Very different things. I'm a rangatakau now, but he whaipanga hau was released, so that's Papa's mahi, and now I've got a kid running around. The numbers are the same. We have the highest incarcerated numbers of Indigenous women in the world in Aotearoa, and I've been grappling with that and what's our role, what's my role in being the shift of that reality, because you get corrections, they've dropped a hokairangi, like real beautiful with all the Māori words and the Māori things in it, but it's the same delivery, it's the same white supremacist kāwana process delivering those things. But I was at there was a Waitangi Tribunal Justice Wānanga that happened on the weekend, and I was being a bit of a tutu about it, being like, stop asking our whānau to share the shit that's happened to us. You actually need to listen and just do. But moi maun close, she said something that sort of stuck with me, which was around, even though the threads you go over and over again, it's like the tuku panels that by the end it's a different picture. And I think that's some of the work that I feel committed to doing for my life, is like talking too much for a change, and but actually just being unrelenting, sharing that kōrero, and thinking that there will be a different picture by the time Rua Taupari's an older rangatahi like me, that there will be those obvious shifts from Papa's time to baby's time to our moko's time. But I'm just unrelentless about what I expect for our people and our potential and our right to just be.
Nā koe e hoa. Te Matahiapo.
Staying brave. There's something Moana always used to say, particularly at the end of emails. I'd send him things. I'd say, "Please critique this." So there was a moment where I had to critique the Te Arawhiti guidance on Treaty of Waitangi compliant policy that says that kāwanatanga goes over tino rangatiratanga, because Kokorani put me on it when I was doing an internship. And I sent that to him, and I sent things like that to him, and he would talk about it and come back to me, and then he would say, always at the end, stay brave. And so that's one thing, is always trying to stay brave, is to not let what currently exists limit my aspirations, let it limit my imagination, but allowing what I think and what we think as a collective should be, or what ought to be for us as a people, letting that push me. So staying brave. And going back to Jay's point, staying alive. So I think sometimes we underestimate the actual power in just, plain survival. We're asking a lot of our people all the time, and I think even just being alive and staying alive and making sure that the whakapapa continues, that those series of never-ending beginnings keep going. And then after, the step of staying alive, being alive, is the fact of connecting. If we think and conceptualize colonization as a never-ending story of disconnection, whether that's disconnection from reo, whakapapa, whenua, foreshore and seabed, then our job is to simply connect. And so what I'm trying to do is to connect myself, connect my whānau, connect my people to our whakapapa, to our kōrero tuku iho, because to the point that actually is in Koro Whatarangi's book over here, is that there's the symbiotic relationship between the restoration of tino rangatiratanga and cultural revitalisation, right? Is that when we revitalise our culture, an inherent part of that is inseparable from every other bit, is tino rangatiratanga over everything. So when we revitalise our culture, we are inherently revitalising tino rangatiratanga. And yeah.
E nā koe kare.
I think two things that we're doing to contribute to constitutional transformation. And when I think about constitutional transformation in the matike mai Aotearoa kaupapa, I think about it as a ahi. And you have those who are ahi ka, like our po, Papa Bill, Whaia Margaret, Kokoroni, who keep the ahi stoked and blazing. And then you have those of us who might be ahi whita and ahi komo, who might just come every now and then and contribute to that ahi to ensure that it keeps ablazed. And so I'm probably one of, because I'm further down the hierarchy, waiting for the baton at this end, while Kokoroni and others hold on to that baton. We are preparing for ourselves to carry it on when that is handed over. And so how we are contributing to that is seeing what happens through our Matike Maitahiaroa research project, which is focused on understanding how the ihu mātau kaupapa contributes to constitutional transformation because of the way that the kaupapa was settled outside of the treaty settlements process. And so trying to understand that's one way that we can contribute to matike mai. Another is by carrying on the mahi that hundreds of rangatahi facilitators all around the motu began and carried across 80 different rangatahi hui around the motu in different arenas carrying on their mahi, and I just want to honour those rangatahi who did that work and the establishing rōpū like Tira, like Misty, and like Ngā Rauira, and Karena as well. And so we are committed to continuing on that mahi, finishing the rangatahi report, we promise, but also we plan on going out to different rohe. We've been out to 2 different rohe and given kōrero about matike mai Aotearoa to rangatahi audiences to help them understand what it's about, translating it in our generation's language so that so it's easier for them to understand and to pick up. So we've done 2 of those. We did one last weekend at Rahui Pōkeka at Wāhi Pā Marae, and they were hungry for this kōrero, and they said to us, we can't wait until these wānanga are rolled out across the motu. And so we have the responsibility now to frame up those wānanga and go out to all rangatahi across our motu. We have a motto, no rangatahi left behind in this kaupapa. And we're going to go to anybody. We've got even dreams about getting a bus, a matike mai Aotearoa bus. Okay. So any funders in the room, please come and see us if you've got any pūtea. We want a bus where we can travel around the motu giving this kōrero so we can ensure that ahi remains ablaze and keeps growing until we achieve constitutional transformation in 2040. And if I don't get the chance after this kōrero, through this kōrero, before we finish, I just want to say a big thank you to Moana's whānau for sharing him with us. Over the last couple of days, I was reflecting on those times where Papa Moana used to text me on the front lines. He was at home and I didn't know he was sick. It was Tina that told me that he was really, and he was māwiwi, and I couldn't believe that he was contributing his time and travelling up to Ihu Mātau to come and talk to our whānau, which seemed to me was so insignificant at that time. But his use was so generous in sharing him with us over those years, and we were sending him documents that we were drafting with the Crown and between kingitanga, and he reviewed them, and he always come back with those intellectual questions and those challenges. But will your whānau be happy with this? Will your mokopuna look back in 50 years and be proud of the work that you are doing? And always felt cornered like Ronnie did, but just was so appreciative that he was able to share his time. So I just want to say thank you to his mokopuna and thank you to his whānau for sharing him with us.
Kia ora, tēnā tātou and whānau. I'm conscious we have 2 minutes left, so before we close off the session, I have one more question for our panel members, and this contributes towards our objective of setting actions for ourselves, for our whānau and our communities to further support Moana's mahi in this space. So we'd love to hear, and we've got 2 minutes whānau, what are some of the actions you'd like to see for others to continue on Moana's work? And I'm going to start with you, Julia.
I'll do the koe thing and pass it to you, Sam. Kia koe te rangatahi.
It's sort of part of what's really been said, be relentless, connect. And I'd sort of, believe. I was with him one time and I said, what's the greatest thing colonisation ever took from us? And he goes, belief. And I thought, has he gone a bit rori-rori? Because I thought he was talking about Christianity. and I sat there for a second, I was like, okay. And then he went to explain, and he talked about our belief that our language was worth speaking, our laws were worth living by, all of those things. So believing in our people, taking our people with us. Another time I was like, I've got all these blooming ideas. And I don't think our people are ready. He said, you always have to bring our people with us. We can't do this without our people. We can't do these things on our own, just us people in this room, just us people watching on the live stream. It has to be every single one of us, all of our whānau, all of our hapu, all of our iwi. And be relentless in our imagination and our determination that these things will happen. Because sometimes we talk about it as, constitutional transformation can happen or it might happen. I think we need to have, not that we don't, of course, but stronger language. It will happen. I always say, no, it will happen. It will not happen. It will happen by 2040, at least. Ka pai? So, yeah.
Tēnā koe, te Matahiapo. Jay.
What I know will happen by 2040 is my children will be older. And so that's what I know. And those are the noisy ones over there. And our whānau are dedicated, our hapu are dedicated, our iwi are dedicated to that. So, check.
For me, the biggest thing would be have to prioritise succession, ensuring that we're bringing the next generations along with us, which is something that I really value through the Matike Mai work. Moana would drag Kukuroni used to drag us, and so now I'm thinking, who are we going to drag along with us? Jay mentioned his tamariki, and we're thinking about doing this roadshow, this kaupapa, to ensure that other rangatahi will pick up the baton when we leave. And two last things would be patience and understanding. We are only as fast as the slowest person in our hapu, and so be patient, be understanding.
I'll be fast. Love our people, believe in ourselves, and truly do that. I want to leave the mahi though to Pākehā in this room, and as tangata tiriti, the power is held by the Crown and the benefits are felt by Pākehā. Although there are benefits if it's truly understood, and Māori we are given the space to thrive and make decisions for ourselves, te mea. But Pākehā, you need to own Pākehā culture. I often hear Pākehā, you can't be Pākehā anywhere else in the world. And to own Pākehā culture, to learn that and to learn where the power structures lie and to challenge that within your own people and within our own governance. Because I'm tired of seeing we've got many tōkana in this room who are the ones who have been fighting, who are speaking, but there's an undercurrent of inherent racism within this country, and so our voices don't have influence as it does around your own cups, around your own tables. Whaia Net one time said something like the biggest sphere of influence, or whatever, was like your cup of teas, like have a cup of tea in the kōrero. And so for the Pākehās, you've got all the Pākehās at your table. The aunties and the uncles and whatever. So have those challenges within your own whānau, because we need to shift it across where the power sits and lies and be really conscious of that. So do the learning and all of that. I say, and then I like to finish it by saying my wife's Pākehā. Okay, thank you, bye.
Kia ora, there you have it, whānau. So believe, take our people with us, be relentless in our imagination and determination, prioritise succession in our tamariki, patience, understanding, and Julia's wife is tauiwi. Kia ora. O kia ora, kei te mihi ki a koutou mō tō taima, me tō tautoko ki tēnei kaupapa, kei te mihi, kei te mihi. Thank you, Julia, te Matahiapo, Jay, and Pania. Thank you to all of our participants in person and online for joining us in the power, in our truth, rangatahi.